Good evening, beautiful ladies and most enterprising ladies. At the onset of this new quarter, which we are going to call as Smartup Quarter, under our vertical Samadhan with the tagline Nurturing Lives and Creating Entrepreneurs, headed by Monica Chaudhary and by our Senior Vice Chair Radhika Gupta, we want to tell you that this quarter, which includes the month of October, November, and December, we are focusing on building and upscaling your entrepreneurial skills. That will include many sessions like these with Shreya Shah, including workshop with national level trainers like Sampath Sachdeva from LinkedIn, Preeti Anand Rathi, founder of Ishka Films and managing director of Anand Rathi Shares and Stockholders. In Flow, we believe there is no stopping to a person who wishes to aspire for greater things even later in life. But we need to take those steps, even if they are those baby steps. But every step counts. As long as you're going forward, you add them all up, and one day you look back and you'll be surprised at where you might get. Remember to dream big, think long term, underachieve on a daily basis, and take baby steps. This is the key to a long term success. To begin, may I now invite Mrs. Radhika Gupta, who is also the co-convener for Samadhan, which means a solution, to initiate the session. Also, a heartfelt thanks to these young and enthusiastic young ladies, Aina Garg and Ashni Sethi, for day chairing this event and seaming everything together so meticulously. Over to you, Radhika. And I can see a lot of participants from Pan India. A very warm welcome to you all. And Radhika, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all for today's session. In this globalized world, change is the only thing that is constant. The more innovation a businesswoman can bring to her business, the brighter her chances of succeeding and sustaining. Flow is about the plethora of many visions, one of which is keeping our members engaged, motivated, accelerate growth, initiate transformation in the areas of their interest. Samadhan is the incubator and mentorship cell for women entrepreneurs. It is a single window solution for existing businesses and startup ventures. The main objective of this initiative is handhold young businesses and entrepreneurs with high growth potential by providing them necessary guidance. Our Samadhan team has worked relentlessly day and night, brainstorming on the format, selecting this series for you all. All I can say that with an able leader, organized working, dedicated team, anything is possible. Congratulations, Mannat Kothari and Monica Chaudhary, for the vision of creating successful entrepreneurs. Now, I would like to call Ms. Ashni Sethi to brief us about this digital workshop. Over to you, Ashni.
Good evening to all present here. Samadhan has come up with the series about creating business online with Ms. Shreya Shah. These series are divided into 8 sessions, each session teaching different aspect of e-commerce. The first session, we would be including introduction and paperwork that online businesses needs to apply for. Session 2 would be including designing your own logo and social media posts. Third session will include e-commerce basics regarding the payment gateways. Session 4th and 5th will include about traditional versus digital marketing, how both are important in their own space. 6th and 7th session will include productivity Google setup like Google Sheets and Google Forms. 8th session and our last session will be all about bookkeeping, which will include quick bookkeeping. Hope Aina Garg to introduce Mrs. Shreya Shah.
Thanks, Ashni. Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to Ms. Shreya Shah. It is our pleasure to have you with us for conducting digital series of business learnings for all Flow Ludhiana ladies. We are sure by the end of this series, we all will be equipped to solely handle all our digital needs or kickstart our businesses into online mode. Let me give you a quick brief on Shreya and her platform, Easy Hai. By education, Shreya is a chartered accountant and an MBA alumni from the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. She is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, and it is this passion that has led her to start this venture. In the lockdown, Shreya and her sister started a digital literacy platform called Easy Hair. Easy Hair began due to a personal need when the sisters noticed in their own family how all adults had the latest smartphones but barely knew how to use it. Easy Hair helps you learn any technology, any app, any software very easily on your phone, iPad, and laptop. It was born initially to support their own family members to be safe during COVID times by teaching them how to order groceries online or help in using cashless systems for payments. Today, they run classes on Zoom daily. In just 3 months, they've reached out to more than 1,500 adults across the world. Their story has been featured in Your Story, Better India, The Hindu, Hindustan Times, Indian Express, Education Express, and Nai Dunya, to name a few. Now, I would like to call upon Ms. Shreya to take over the event and kick-start it with the first session on digital series.
Thank you so much, Manat ma'am, Aina, Aishna, and the rest of the team for having me here today. So before I get started, I thought it would be really nice to know each other because we're on a longer journey of about 3 months. You're going to be seeing me twice a month. So if you can quickly get to the chat box and in one sentence, just tell me where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, whether you're already part of a business or you have an idea that hasn't kickstarted yet, it's totally okay. But it would just help me a lot better in understanding you. And also, I guess the session can be a lot more relatable if I just get to know you a wee bit better. Yeah, and also like, if you want to share what industry you're part of or, just a quick line. That's it. That's all I want. So we'll just wait for a few, for a moment till I get everyone else's response. And I guess the idea of this series was for us to break barriers so we can do kind of like the dirtier part of the business, right? Everything is not rosy, and that's what we're here to discuss. So I would appreciate it if you use the chat box and interact with me. Perfect. Thank you. I'm already seeing a bunch of responses. That's great. Let me tell you how this whole series was kind of conceptualized. So I started running a business from the age of 20. And these were things I wish I knew before I started because I burnt my hands so many times. I got into bad deals, got into bad partnerships, and always worked around and trying to see what was a better way to do things. And so I kind of thought about it like if I can kind of put down my experiences in the entrepreneurial journey in a way that if some kind of then fulfilled. So this was the idea and inspiration behind kind of sharing each other's experiences. So I'm going to quickly read a bit so that I can relate to this. Lovely. Okay. So this is great because I see that most of you are already one step ahead of me. In today's session, we're actually going to go one step behind and talk about how to really get started with your business. So this session is not about finding your passion or your ikigai or brainstorming in the idea. This is after that brilliant idea has struck you. What do we do next, right? How do we kick off from that point in time is where we're going to get started today, okay? So we're going to break down this session into 4 parts. And after each part, I'm going to stop for a few moments to check if you're doing okay. If you have any questions at that point in time, I encourage you to use the chat box. We'll answer and then we'll move on to the next section. And of course, I'll stay back end of the session in case you have any more queries or thoughts on the same, okay? So I'll just share my screen now so we can get started. So I'm going to call this the go-to-market strategy. And the reason I say using technology is because that will help us make our work so much faster and easier. And that's the idea behind this series. So when we're starting a new business, what is the first thing that we need to do? The first thing actually we need to do is understand what is our legal entity. Now I know that this is a whole series on starting a business online and e-commerce, but please understand, online is just another channel of selling. Your legal entity and your basics still need to be right no matter how and where you're selling. And the thing that I've noticed often is that women especially are very frightened. The minute they see the word legal or the minute they see the word money, they automatically think that, oh no, I cannot handle this. This is something that I don't understand. Let my husband, my brother, someone else in the family kind of let them take over. So why don't you put a little yes or no in the chat box if you agree or disagree with me? Has this ever happened to you? Where the minute you see any of these terminologies, you're just like, I cannot handle this. Yeah, I see a few yeses and agree already, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is that I am a chartered accountant, and even I was in the same step as you. Because even though we studied, when we come to immediately practically applying it, we just get so frightened. We're like, no, I will not understand this. We've already made up our mind. And that's really my first starting point, is that we need to remove that block. And how do we remove that mental block? Is simply by education, understanding. And the minute you understand more, the fear of that subject is reduced and you'll be able to handle it. So typically in any business situation, there are 5 types of legal entities. There's actually a 6th one, but I'm not covering that yet, which is a public limited company, which is for much larger organizations. At this point in time, we're a small business, a medium scale business. So one of these 5 legal vehicles will be a good starting point for us. Now, for those of you who are already in your business, either part of your family business or in partnership or wherever you are, take a minute today to understand what your legal entity is. Why this is important is for many reasons, and we're going to come across that as we come along. Okay, I'll briefly explain to you what each of this means, but you typically need to go to a lawyer to get everything sorted. The first one is a simple one, which is a sole proprietorship firm, which is me and my business are one and the same. We are inseparable, kind of like one soul, 2 bodies. Okay, so whatever money I make from my business is mine. Whatever loss I make is also mine. I am inseparably attached to my business. So while the advantages of this business is is vast, right? Like it's the easiest legal entity to set up. But the disadvantage is that if you incur a loss, then your personal assets get attached to this business to pay off your debts. Okay, so this is the biggest disadvantage. And of course, there is no, in terms of compliances, this is the easiest method to work with. Now, why am I saying these compliances? Because you have to understand, when you incorporate a legal vehicle in your business, this is not like a one-time thing. This is a yearly affair, because you have to file your returns, you have to fulfill certain compliances. And if you fail to do that, you also attract liabilities and penalties to your business. So this is something you need to know from the very beginning. Similar to a sole proprietorship, so the compliances at the start of a sole proprietorship is very simple. You just need a shop act or an NOC from the local government. Basically, some proof of business is all you need to show. And your recurring compliances are, you have to prepare your financial statements, you have to file your IT returns, GST if it's applicable, pretty much just about this. So easiest to operate, easiest to comply with year on year. This similar structure, but if I'm not doing a business by myself, I decide to do business with more than one person, then I will look at a partnership firm. Now, in a partnership firm, I can get together with my friends or with my family members, and we can decide to do a business together. We can also decide what will be each of our capital in the business. Also, we can decide at what ratio we will be sharing our profits and losses. But we come with unlimited liability, which means if the business faces losses, then I am personally responsible to pay off those debts. This is very important to understand, because in COVID especially, many businesses went through a major downfall and a lot of their personal assets were attached, increasing stress, so on and so forth. Also, the bigger disadvantage in a partnership firm is negligence or a misful conduct of another partner means I am also liable. Okay, say Manat ma'am and Aina, three of us decide to get into a partnership firm together, and I did something wrong. I either committed a criminal act or a civil act, or some lawsuit is against me. Then even those two get affected in the process, because business and us, we are one and the same in the process. Okay, here also the compliance at the start is a simple partnership deed, nothing major. However, it's always recommended that you get this partnership deed registered. The reason that they request you to register it, so that in case of any legal issues tomorrow, this will help us. The problem is, we are so optimistic when we're starting a business. We always think of, oh, when will I touch that 1 million or 1 billion mark? But the reality is that 95% of the businesses actually go wrong. And they could go wrong because the idea didn't work, or the people didn't work, or the partnership failed, or so on and so forth. And that's when the legality really helps you. The other reason why I'm stressing so much on your paperwork is, today you want to set up a business online. The first thing that they're going to ask for is your paperwork. It's great that you have a fancy looking Instagram page or a Facebook page, but if your paperwork isn't strong, then you're in trouble right there and then. And the recurring compliances, which is your year-on-year compliances, are like you're filing your financial statements, your income tax returns, GST. I'm going to come to this in a little while. So again, very simple to manage. Then came a third structure, which is a one-person company, which is a relatively newer structure, about 3-4 years old, OPC as it's called, which means I today individually can form a company of my own. Why would I do that? See, I don't want to be in partnership with anybody else. I don't have any other person who I can kind of come along with. It's my business. I want to keep it mine alone. Then I can look at a one-person company registration. This is better than a sole proprietorship, simply because it has a separate legal entity existence, which means me and my business are two separate. So if the business makes a loss, it will be restricted only to the assets of the company, and my personal property will not be attached to the business. That's the biggest. Have lower.
Shreya, your voice is not audible. Shreya.
Is it better now? Okay.
Yes.
Maybe I'll just take you through one-person company again. I can see that there are a few questions in the chat box. Okay, they're all that I've lost audio. Great. I'm going to come back to this, okay? I will come back to the questions. Let me just finish 2 more legal entities, and then we'll take up all your questions in this particular section. So one-person company is better than a sole proprietorship for the simple reason that your liability is limited to the extent of the assets that are attached or disclosed as part of your company. And it has much lower compliance requirements than a proper private limited company. So this is a newer concept and quite an upcoming one. So this is something that you can consider. The compliances at the beginning, okay, the LLP deed over here is a mistake. Ignore that, please. You have to file your incorporation form with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and you have to get your common seal. And your recurring compliances are that everything, all your financial statements now need to be filed with MCA, which is nothing but Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So in case of partnership firm, it's registrar. But in case of company, you have to go to MCA. It's a different governing body. That's all you need to understand. Okay. Now, after that came the 4th vehicle, which is LLP, Limited Liability Partnership. Now, this is a hybrid that I don't want to go through this whole headache of a corporate management, but at the same time, I want my liability to be limited. The thought that me and my business are inseparable scares me. So an LLP then is a good option. Again, a very upcoming option. A lot of people prefer it. This is also my personal favorite when it comes to a very small business, because it's very easy to set up. And in terms of your cost, in terms of your initial cost as well as your recurring cost, it's much lower. Okay, so this is an LLP, and these are the compliances at the beginning. At the end, however, is also very, very simple in comparison to other vehicles. Then comes the private limited company, which happens to be one of the most popular methods of registering a company, especially if you're thinking of a larger idea. If you think your idea can be an idea where you can get in funds at some point in time, you're looking at investor money coming in at some point in time, then a private limited company is a good option. It is an expensive option, no doubt, because it's expensive to set it up. It's also expensive to maintain it year on year. Remember that we have yearly costs, no matter what your legal vehicle is. That being said, it's one of the most popular methods of raising funds. What happens in a private limited company is that we have shareholders and we have directors. So that's why when fundraising concept comes in, they can acquire a certain percentage of your shares in the company, and that's how you end up divesting your share to investors. And of course, it has a separate legal entity, which means the business and me are totally separate. Hence, my liability is limited. So these are, and you can of course see that the compliances are the most in case of a private limited company, and this doubles and triples when it comes to a public limited company. Public limited companies are the companies that are listed in your stock exchange. So they go through SEBI requirements as well. That's a long way. That's not how you should start a company, not by doing a public limited company, and it's neither easy to do that. So you typically start with a proprietorship or a partnership firm or an LLP, and you can always convert. That's another option that you have. However, there is also cost to convert. So which vehicle I must choose depends on my goals at work, okay? So these, you can take a screenshot of this, okay? These are a whole bunch of websites that are actually really resourceful in terms of understanding these different structures in detail. They also tell you how much time it's going to take you to incorporate your business into one of these legal vehicles. They also give you cost. They also give you the timelines, the documentation required, and the whole process. And honestly, it won't take you more than 30 minutes if you have to just spend some time on either of these websites. They work pan-India and they'll work in Ludhiana as well. There should be no problem whatsoever. The thing what I like about these is that they have made everything so transparent, because today the first thing we do is we try to find an auditor and we say, okay, please help me with this. There is no limit to what the cost would be, because you don't have a benchmark today. These websites help you set that benchmark so you understand, okay, for example, today for me to set up a private limited company, it will cost about 7,000. It doesn't matter then that you get it done from your auditor, but at least you're more informed, and the minute you're more informed, your bargaining power increases to negotiate, okay? So that's about these legal entities. If you have any questions, just put them quickly on the chat box so we can take it before I move to the next section.
Shreya, is there any likeliness of getting these notes?
I can share the screenshots of this, no problem. We can put it up on that group. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. That'll be very kind of you. Thank you.
So I saw your question, Madanam, can we have an agreement with partner relating to liabilities, as in we're limiting them? So in partnership, you can have all sorts of discussion. You can always say, I will put in 60% of the money, but you need to work 80% of the time. You can put in all of those clauses in a partnership firm. That is totally possible. Typically, what is a partnership? It's nothing but an arrangement or an understanding in writing. And the thing is, we always plan for the good situation, like how we're going to share the profits. But what happens, and this is something, so I also run 2 restaurants in Chennai, and we've had to close one down. And it was such a painful process because my partnership deed wasn't strong enough. It didn't have enough clauses to say what it is that we're going to do when we have to shut a business. And that process took 2.5 months to settle. And it was painful, right? So much time, energy, effort, everything's gone in the process. So don't just plan for the great part in your business. Always plan for what happens if our plan fails. Because the statistics show that 95% of your businesses do fail. So the good part is to be realistic about it. And if everything goes great, you're fine. It's just a clause in your act. But when things go south, that helps you so much, you have no idea. One person company has the same PAN as the owner. No, they're two different legal entities. The minute they're two different legal entities, two different PANs. Okay? So are you all aware of what legal entity you're part of, or was this part a little helpful to you? Could you just use the chat box and let me know if everything's okay so far? Also go through these websites. They are really, really good. Great, thank you so much. Yeah, it just helps to know that you haven't fallen asleep, because otherwise I'll get a good round of firing from Mannat ma'am after, you know. So this is good. Okay, great. Now, other than those, you need to have some more basic compliances in place. For example, PAN, which is your permanent account number, that's your number that you use to file your income tax returns. That should always be there. No matter what business vehicle you're using, this is the first document you're going to apply for. The second document, or you're going to have a current account with the bank. Please don't do a savings account with your bank. You don't get half the facilities, and to convert is very, very painful. COVID times, you cannot step out. Start a current account from the very beginning, okay? Rent agreement or sale deed of business premises. Now, this is important. Basically, my idea here to tell you is that you need to have proof of business, some proof of business from where you're operating, because e-commerce operators require that, okay? And then, of course, you have GST, TAN, and trade-specific compliances. I want to take 2 minutes to talk about these. GST is nothing but, everyone knows what it is, your goods and service tax. However, what's important for you to know is that it's not important to register compulsorily if you don't cross the threshold. So if you don't cross 40 lakhs, then you don't need to register for GST. And in case of services, if you don't cross 20 lakhs, again, you don't need to register. In that financial year, April to March. But what happens is, this has some rules. Like if you want to do interstate sales, or if you want to sell online, then whether you're doing 1 rupee sale or 41 lakh sale, you still need to have GST with you. Okay? So it's always, so my suggestion is get GST done. Or if you know, especially since this whole series is about going online, then you cannot do online business until and unless you don't have GST. E-commerce platforms do not allow for that. Okay? TAN. Has anyone heard of TAN? I'm sure you've heard of TAN, but if anyone can take to the chat box and tell me what TAN means to them, that would be great. I already saw a lot of people are part of the business, so I'm assuming few people should know about this. For a sole proprietor, does one need to have a separate PAN for their business, Ms. Ria? No, you and the business are inseparable. So the return, everything is filed under your name. The profit of that becomes the income of you. Okay, that's how it works. TDS, is it to avoid tax? No, definitely not. TDS is so that you don't avoid tax. They've put it in the place, okay? What TAN is nothing but the transaction account number. Have you heard of the concept called TDS, or tax deducted at source? Okay, so what is TDS? Can someone take a second to try and explain TDS? And it's very important for business, which is why I'm trying to explain this to you, that if you are already running a business, then for you to understand TDS is very important. So what TDS does is, there are certain types of payments in a business that you need to make, which are not really a proof that something has taken place between us. For example, rental income, commission, brokerage. These are just kind of money that's getting exchanged. There's no proof really, like, you know, whether it's not like selling products where I know products has been exchanged, hence I'm getting money in return. So such kind of payments, they are very likely to get avoided from the tax bracket. So the government says, so say for example, Mannat ma'am has been my, say a consultant, and I need to pay her consultancy fees. If I pay her consultancy fees, there is a tax bracket. You have to look up section 194H. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to tell you that these are basic things that you need to know if you don't want to burn your fingers. Okay? If you go through that section, it will tell you what is the commission percent, what is the tax percentage for that particular income. So for example, Manat ma'am is telling me it's 7.5%. For instance, I don't know because there are a lot of clauses and there are a lot of tax brackets. Say it's 7.5%. I have to pay her 10,000 rupees. I deduct 7.5% and then I have to pay her the balance. So what I'm doing, I'm paying tax on behalf of her. And when I'm paying tax on behalf of her, I tell the government, okay, I've already paid tax on behalf of Manat. All she needs to do is now when she's filing her tax returns, she can say that this tax is already deducted, so I'm not going to pay again. So there's some paperwork that's involved in this exchange process to prove to her income tax authorities as well as to me. Now, why do I need to do it? I don't care if Manat files her return or not. It's none of my business, right? The problem is the government says, if you as an employer, you were supposed to do this task on my behalf, you failed to do it and I will punish you for this. And how will they punish? So ideally, they will disallow that entire expenditure and I will have to pay more tax because so ideally I should have gotten 10,000 deducted because I paid money to her from my profit and loss statement, but they don't get deducted. Instead, I had to, suppose my profit was 10,000, I will now have to pay tax on 10,000 plus the 10,000 that I defaulted on, 20,000 rupees. Okay, so that's why deducting TDS is very important because if you don't do it, you will lose your income tax benefits, you will attract penalty, and you will also attract interest on the penalty because you've done that interest also you have to pay to the government. Many people forget to do this. And please let me remind you, if your auditor is very nice, he may sometimes tell you, may sometimes forget to tell you, but most likely they will not tell you. If you make a mistake, they'll say, oh ma'am, we forgot to do it. No problem, I'll pay the fine so that you can go on with your business. But these fines are very expensive fines. You have to pay interest at 18%. It's very, very high. So here is the exercise that you need to do. You need to just go Google section 194H and you will find the entire TDS provisions. Now it's not scary at all. All you have to do is go through those expenses that they have mentioned and see if any of it apply to your business. For example, if you are paying rent, then 100% you have to deduct TDS. If you have a consultant on board, 100% you have to pay TDS. Brokerage, lottery income, any of this income which don't really involve in exchange of goods, most likely you have to pay TDS. Salaries, the biggest component. If you're a business owner today, you are going to employ people, hence you will have to pay TDS on that. So this is a one-time activity for you to understand. I'm just going to write the section down on the chat box for you, okay? Otherwise, just look up TDS applicability for my business. If you just Google these terms also, you will find it. It's a one-time exercise. Once you read that entire section, you will immediately know that every time you have to make a payment, just do a mental note. Do I need to deduct TDS or am I fine? If you need to deduct TDS, that's all you have to do. You just have to then check with your auditor. Okay, I'm making this payment. How much shall I deduct? And then they will carry on with the rest of the process. So this is very important. I've seen a lot of people lose money in this, okay? Which is why we need to be careful of this. Trade-specific compliances like FSSAI or trademark. Now, if you are in the business of food, for instance, you need to have additional licenses like FSSAI. This is important because if you're trying to scale up your business on Zomato or Swiggy or even Amazon, suppose you have pre-packaged products and you're trying to sell on Amazon, without an FSSAI license, they will not permit you to sell. So check if you have for your particular trade, do you need an FSSAI license or any other similar license? Google it, do your basic research. If you need it, apply for it. Because you'll think you have a great product, you did a fantastic photo shoot, I'm all ready to go on Amazon, but there's a big full stop if your paperwork isn't in place. Okay? And trademark. Now, what exactly is a trademark? It's nothing but a unique symbol or an icon or your logo or a particular font or music, any specific mark or a symbol that distinguishes your brand from the others, you can consider this is just to say, hey, this is my brand and you cannot use this. For example, if you've seen Nike shoes, they have a little tick mark on their shoes. That's called the swoosh. They went and even trademarked that so that no other shoe company can use even that tick mark. Because that tick mark to any consumer like you and I could mean that that's a Nike shoe and they don't want to be misled. Hence, they get that thing trademarked. Now, is it important to get yourself trademarked? It's not important. But is it recommended? Yes, it's recommended. Personal experience, I started an e-commerce company. That was my first venture. It was called It's Handmade. I made a beautiful logo and I put it online and everything. I didn't get it trademarked. And someone in Dubai took my logo, took everything from me, copied it, put it all over, created a similar website. And could I do anything about it? No. I mean, I could take it to the court of law, but the whole process would have taken so much time back and forth. And I don't have any paperwork to establish the fact that I'm the creator of that logo. So when you get a trademark done, then you have certain legal protection over others. That's your advantage. And the minute you go online, remember you have increased your risk manifold to copying, to imitation, and to everything under the sun. Okay, so you need to have protection from all sides, and this is one way to stay protected is to go get trademark. Now, how do you get a trademark? What is the process? You remember that list of websites that I shared with you? They will give you all the details. It roughly costs 7,500 to about 9,000 rupees to get your trademark done. And obviously they will get a trademark only if that name doesn't exist. So one thing that I do nowadays is every time I'm starting a new business, I also check by the side that if the trademark exists for that particular brand. Because if it exists, it's fine. Like I had a cafe, which was called the Summer House. And turns out that there was another cafe in Delhi with the same name, the Summer House, because it's kind of generic. So I didn't get a trademark because there was another venture with the similar name somewhere else that already applied for a trademark. So then I had to try and go in for the logo. Okay, so there are different class specifications under trademarks as well. And this is something best that we don't do it ourselves. Go to an IP lawyer and they'll be able to help you. If you don't know where to go to or who to go to any of those websites like Vakil Search, Registration Wala. They have entire processes to do this and their prices are very competitive. So you won't even get cheated on the prices. Okay? Are you all with me? Give me a yes so far if you are, or you can also tell me, Shreya, I'm bored, whichever way. Then I'll try and crack a joke in between perhaps. Okay, good. You're all with me. That's good. Any doubts so far? Just quickly put it up. Thank you, Miss Kavita. These are just my own experiences, which I thought if someone told me, I would really not have burnt my hands so many times. This is how it's come about, right? Okay, thank you. Let's move on now. So like all of this is so overwhelming, so much facts. How do I keep a track of all of this? This is something that I do that helps me, and I just thought I'll share this with you in case any of you find it useful, is remember these compliances and legal things, they won't change day to day. This is something that you need to do once a year only. And then only keep your ears and eyes open in case there is an amendment. Like for example, on October 1st, there was an amendment with something to do with TCS and things like that. Once in a while, or when the budget comes out, you just have to revise it at that point in time alone. But for everything else, you can set up a calendar like this, where you can kind of talk about, okay, great. We have an IP lawyer with us, and I'm sure she's going to be more than happy to help us. Thank you, Ms. Deepa, for letting us know. And for everyone else, you can, I guess, connect with her. So what really happens, this is what I do. And when am I supposed to pay TDS? Like I have to pay TDS before the 7th of every month. So I've kind of made that note. When do I need to file my GSTR? When is Provident Fund applicable to me? ESI, so on and so forth. So I've kind of created this up for myself. This just helps me to stay on track with all my requirements, okay? So even if you have an accountant, if you have a larger business, make sure that your accountant is following these dates, because if they miss it, you as a company are the ones going to be paying a fine on this. Please don't forget that. Okay. So yeah, this helps me a lot to know that if I default, what is the interest I'm going to pay? And the minute I see that interest at 9% and 18%, it scares me so much. I'm like, no, better act. Okay. So I hope this helps you in reducing your fear just a little bit, that it's actually not that bad. It's just about sitting with your auditor once, or just sitting with someone who can help you understand your legal compliances once and for all. Okay. Now, once we have all our paperwork in place, we're going to talk about how do we move online. Now, this first step, sorry, this is my section break time. So I'm going to just stop for a moment and check if you're all doing okay. Just a second. Okay, you want me to show you the calendar again? Yeah, sure, 1 second. Sorry. I mean, this is just what I've done is just a sample calendar for my business. Obviously, every business is going to be a little different. For manufacturing, it's going to be a bit more requirements. So you obviously have to check that, but something like this helps. You can also take a screenshot of this. I'll also share it with Manat ma'am. She'll share it with all of you. But just putting this out there will tell you all the things that you're supposed to do. And when it's visually out there, it's a little less scary. That's what I think. Okay. So I'll share all this with you. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Okay. This is the one that I guess you want to see. This is for last month that I made. I'm yet to make one for October. Also, otherwise, you can just ask your auditor to send you a compliance calendar. Just use the same words. If you have an auditor or an accountant already, ask them to do this for you. The point is, you'll still have people to do it, but as an entrepreneur, our job is to manage this. And we'll only be able to effectively manage if we ourselves know what are the requirements. Otherwise, so easy to take you for a ride. Trust me on that. Okay? All right. Any other questions, or can I move to the online part? Great. So what is the domain name, right? Very simple. It's your address on the internet. That's it. Like how you have a home address, you need to have an address on the internet. Facebook.com, that's a domain name. Gmail.com, that's a domain name. Amazon.com, that's a domain name. Okay. ShreyaBajaj.com, that's a domain name. So I can make a domain name of anything that I like. This becomes your internet address and sort of like real estate on the internet. So for this, there are a whole bunch of websites that I can use. I'm just going to give you one example today of GoDaddy. Again, one of the first things that you need to do once you have decided what your business is going to be is quickly go buy a domain name. Why? Because it's like a scarce commodity. It's like land. You're not going to find your perfect land to build your office. Just like that, you may not find a domain name that fits your brand very easily. So every time I come up with a brand name, another thing that I do is I also check if the domain name is available. Okay, so for example, I just looked up Easy Hair over here and I realized easyhair.com is taken. And it's also telling me the price at which it's available. This broker is willing to sell me this domain name for 4,059 rupees. Who is this broker? Same thing like offline, you have online brokers also. All they do is they kind of try to do like an assessment of the business names that are kind of trending right now. And then they go quickly and buy domain names so that when someone really needs it, I can sell it at a higher price. Otherwise, you'll see that to buy a domain name is not expensive at all. It could be anywhere between 100 rupees to 500 or 1,000 rupees, depending on what kind of a domain name you'd like to pick up. Earlier, of course, we had the whole .com phase, but it's not as important anymore because people aren't really remembering website names. Today, we just need to click on a certain link to get to a website. So it's not extremely important. It's not very, very important that you always need to get .com. That was because that's how we started. We started with the .com bubble. Hence, we're familiar with that. But today, people also do .ai, .co, if I'm just thinking of an online business, even easyhair.online is a good name because it kind of goes well with my business. It kind of explains my business in the domain name itself. What a lot of other people also do, and it's not a bad idea, is to pick up 2-3 of these website domain names so that you're kind of avoiding competition in relation to your name in the process. Because if you and I both are fighting for easy hair, right? And you may take easyhair.online, I might take easyhair.net. We both have to do the same amount of work to make sure our website comes up on top. And then it might lead to confusion in the eyes of a consumer because they'll be like, "Arey, I to saw easy hair. How am I supposed to know yours is not .online.net?" People get very confused and so what a lot of companies do is they pick up like .co.in is something they may pick up as a bundle, so that even if they go to a wrong website, or that limits the possibilities of your competitors coming in for the same similar domain name. Okay, so that's something that you can do. So it's very easy for you to buy. All you have to say add to cart, and once you've added it to cart, you're basically just shopping online. That's exactly how you buy a domain name. Just read all the instructions in the fine print properly here. Do you want it for a year or 2 years? Usually it's a yearly registration. To get your domain name registered is a 1-year process. You can, however, if you think you're not going to remember it, then you can buy it for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years at the same time. But typically when we're starting a business, we don't really know how well it's going to do. So I, for one, pick it up for 1 or 2 years. And of course, then if it does well, so on and so forth, I then increase my tenure of the domain name, simply because I want to keep my startup costs low. But it's okay. Both the thought processes are fine. You can, if you're very convinced and confident, then you can go in for 10 years also. It's not like someone else will take your name away. Only if you fail to renew it, then it's out available in the market one more time to buy. Okay. So that's about your domain name. And then you just continue to cart and you go ahead and shop your domain name. It's a pretty simple process. You can also compare your prices. I listed out a few of those websites. GoDaddy is just one example. BigGrok, Namecheap. There are so many. You can compare, check the price, figure whatever works for you. Okay, coming back to the presentation. After you buy your domain name, it's very important that you have a professional email ID. What this means is, if suppose, I don't know if Flo Ludhiana has an email ID, but suppose my email ID is fickyfloludhiana@gmail.com versus shreya@floludhiana.com, which is more professional, the second one. Okay, so that for me, like as a viewer, for me, that is the first step to check how professional this company is, if they have a professional email address or not. Because remember, when we're online, we don't really have a fancy office to show. These are the small things that you can do. Build a good website, right? Have a professional email ID. These are the very, very small things that we can do, which are very cost effective, to be honest, that can give it a whole professional look right there and then. Now, sorry. When you, the one that I recommend is a Google Suite, but again, it's not like Google pays me to say this. It's out of my personal experience that if you're a small business owner, and if you're already comfortable with Google, then to have Google itself as your provider for a professional email address is a good point to start, because ease of use, and there are so many collaboration tools like Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Forms that make it a lot easier for small businesses to start running. So G Suite, for those who are smaller businesses, if you're a larger business organization, then you can even consider Microsoft Office 365. That is, if everyone in your office has a desktop, you're using Microsoft products, then you can go for that. G Suite is good for if you want to work online. If you have a small team and your team is across different cities, then G Suite works really well for that. So you just have to click on this gsuite.google.com. I'll send you all of these links. Don't worry about it. They have different plans, and you can start with something as low as 125 rupees a month. And they give you all of the benefits and features, which is including Google Meet, Docs, Drive, Calendar, all of this. All of this comes with your email ID that you just the domain name that you just bought. So say my email ID could be hello@easyhair.com, but I can be using Gmail as my backend because it's easy to use. So this is an area that you can come and explore, and you can set it up. You can link your domain name with your Google ID and get started in the process. Okay. Just going to stop you for one moment to check if you're all okay. Is there any difference from which site we buy our domain name? No, you can, it's fine. They're all competitive. You can check the price and you can go for it. I'm just personally comfortable with GoDaddy, but that's because I haven't explored any other domain name websites. But I know a lot of my friends who buy on BigRock, buy on Namecheap, so they're fine. You're okay. Any of those bigger names are fine. You can also buy a domain on Google also. That's also okay. It's called Google Domains. You can use Google domain, however, is a bit expensive. And what I've heard is GoDaddy is good, but I think their renewal costs are a little higher than the rest. And when I say little higher, it's like 100, 200 bucks higher, not a lot. So I just feel very comfortable using that platform. So I've been using GoDaddy, but you can explore another. It's totally fine. They're all good. They're all big names and all competing websites. So we can buy domain name from G Suite. No, you can't buy your domain name from G Suite. You can buy your domain from Google Domains. G Suite is your email and productivity application or software. So you have to link your domain name with that email ID to start using that. Okay. G Suite provides email ID. Yes, that's right. G Suite gives you the email ID and the email platform with which you will send and receive emails. But what I'm suggesting is you need to have a professional, like your email. If you're in business, you can't have shreyabajaj@gmail.com as your email ID. That's not the right way. I mean, no one's going to stop you. It's not like, it's just unprofessional. It's also very casual. And these small things matter a lot when you're doing an online business. Okay. In terms of building trust and credibility, because it's so hard to do that today. So these small things help. They realize that this person is serious with business. They have a professional email ID. Just perception, that's all. Eventually, we're all using Gmail at the back end, right? It's just that. It's just like, do you have an office or are you working from home? Before COVID times. Now, of course, everything has changed and it doesn't matter so much anymore, but just that. Okay. Now I want to come to setting up your online price. Okay. This to me is very important process and step, which I feel like a lot of us skip. What happens is usually, suppose I built a great product and I think that, okay, this was the cost. I spent 100 rupees in making it. So say, let me sell it for 200 rupees. Okay. I did some calculation in my head and I came up with the figure of 200 and I started marketing. Initially what we do is we market it to our friends and family. We put it up on Facebook, we put it up on Instagram. And then we're like, oh, now the response is great. Now let me think of going online, right? This is usually our trajectory. Let me know in the chat box if you agree with me, yes or no. Is this how we usually do it? We start small, right? We start very informally, very casually with our friends and family. And then we say, okay, now it's good. A lot of people are giving me a good feedback. Maybe I should sell my organic beauty products on Nykaa. And then what happens? You go to Nykaa and then you list your products. Of course, remember your paperwork, all that should be in place. And then you list your product. And then comes the biggest shock of your life. Commissions are so high. Okay. Just an hour ago, before the session, I had a conversation with my friend who's retailing clothes on Nykaa. And she tells me that the commission is on Nykaa. Can anyone take a guess? I'm gonna just kind of build a climax here. What do you think? What do you think the commission is likely on Nykaa for clothes? Come on, take a guess. Anyway, I'm not like I'm going to punish if you're wrong, but tell me what you think it is. 10%, 30%, great amount. What is great amount? Come on, you need to give me a number. 20, 30, 60%. Whoa, that's too high. It's too high. But yeah, Miss Vanita, that's right. Nykaa takes 40% commission. Okay? Crazy. That blew my mind when I heard it today because I was like, that is a lot of money. And I asked my friend, I said, are you even making money? She said, no, I'm just increasing my sales. That's all I'm doing. But if you want to do charity, then start a charitable organization, right? Don't start a business and make losses. And so a good way for you to check that is this really interesting tool called Amazon Commission Calculator. I love, okay? I'm going to share this here with you. And this is such a good way to know what commissions are like in the market today. And why I think you should do this exercise before you sell to your friends and family is, once you've set your price at 200 rupees and suddenly you come on Amazon and you realize, oh my God, the commission is 40%. What am I making? You can't then increase your price and say, oh, no, I did not know. Remember, you reduce your trust in the eyes of a consumer when they come to know that you're selling 200 rupees on Instagram, 220 rupees on Amazon. But you know, if I go to a house, she gives it to me for 150 rupees. This is not good, because the minute a consumer knows this, every time I come to know that a buyer does this, I take full advantage of it and I negotiate and negotiate till I get a good price. So don't do this, okay? Get your facts right, that what would be my likely cost. So for example, to sell on Amazon today, you don't just have a referral fee, you also have a closing fee, you also have a shipping fee. And over and top of that, if you want to advertise your products, you have to pay additional to that. So there are a lot of hidden costs online. So how do we do this, right? They have a really cool calculator. So you select so you say what product you want to sell. So say I want to sell books today. They're asking me now, do you want your books to be sold for below 1,000 rupees or after 1,000? So above 1,000, I mean. So I say, okay, great. Let me try and see that I'm going to be probably selling my book for 750. This is the number in my head. Immediately now, Amazon's telling me if it's below 1,000, the commission I'm going to charge is going to be 7%. I say, okay, fine. I'm going to sell for 750 rupees. And I say, calculate fees. When I say calculate fee, now can you see it's going to take 52.5 rupees. That's my commission I need to pay. Plus Amazon's closing fee of 25 rupees. Plus I need to ship. So am I going to ship with Amazon or am I going to ship by myself? I'm going to say I'll ship via Amazon. It'll be easier for me. And of course, I want to sell nationally. I'm ambitious. I have bigger goals. I'm going to say great. And it's going to be, yes, 500 grams is my book. I'm going to say submit. Now, when you go below, can you see? This is the amount you make. For 750 rupees, you actually only get back 580 rupees. This is very important for you to understand. If after this money, you're able to cover all your other costs, like your manufacturing costs, your time, effort, labor, salaries, rent, marketing cost, then you have made profit. Then you can make a sustainable business online. Otherwise, you'll be hitting numbers, but no profitability. Okay? Did anybody know about this tool before? Just checking the chat box one more time. No. It's interesting though, right? To know that there's so much information that's available at our fingertips and it's not that hard to really fix a price. Okay? And also like this gives you so much idea, right? You might think like my product is so great. I have my few friends and family who are willing to spend 2,000 on this. Please do not do pricing based on that. Your friends and family may just tell you something to please you, may not even buy. So your first set of people who should be really your enemies, if you ask me, people who don't like you, are they willing to buy your product at so-and-so price? Then set that. That's your real market price, not what your friends and family are willing to. They'll buy one time, goodwill gesture. Then what happens? Plus, remember, we want to move online because we want scale. We don't just want to market to 10 people or 15 people. So similar to this, I'll share this link with you. Okay, this is how I do it. It's actually publicly available. I'm just putting it out on the chat box. You can have a look at this. Try it for any product. And even if this is not your business, right? Just for awareness sake. Like, let's see, okay, now that I know how much it is apparel, I'm going to say more than 300 rupees. See, Amazon takes 17%. So this just gives me an idea that I would rather sell my apparel on Amazon than Nykaa. Although remember, Amazon isn't the best platform for apparel. Nike has a better platform for apparel, hence their commissions are that much higher. So you have to do this market research, whatever your product category is, how you're going to sell it online, and what is the money that they're going to really take from you. This is the calculation that you, and it's so easy to do this. All you have to do is just put some arbitrary figures and check how much you're going to get and accordingly price it. Then what happens, once you figured your pricing out, you put the same amount on Instagram. Then you give another 10% discount to your customers by the set. They will also be happy. At the same time, you have one standard price across all platforms. It's a win-win situation for all. Okay. Also, and something similar to that is also Flipkart commission calculator. Very similar to this. So you can even try this. I'll put this up as well in your chat box. So you can have a look at this too. But just to give, you can have a look, right? So see commission, shipping, collection, fixed fee. So many things are available. Plus your settlement amount. Have a look at this. It's credited to your bank account within 17 to 15 business days, which means for 15 to 20 days, money is stuck. There is no cash flow rotation that is happening when you go to online platforms. So you need to factor all of this in, which is after deciding which particular platform you need to go in for. Because if I'm selling directly to consumer, I can get money directly into my bank account or through Google Pay. So I'm getting money instantly. Liquidity is very high. But when I'm going through an online platform, scale is great, but also you need to understand that your funds get blocked for a certain period of time. This is important because I've met so many women who keep putting their own money, like, because, you know, I have so much money, Arey, abhi paise nahi hai, let me just take it from my family and put it. That's not the right way to run a business. Please keep that in mind. You need to account for all this for the business to be sustainable on their own. Okay. So that's your Amazon calculator and Flipkart calculator. I also thought I'll take another one like Swiggy and Zomato in case of food products. Now, because I have a restaurant in Chennai, I can tell you their commissions are actually between 18 to 23%, depending on the product that you have, how good your brand is, so on and so forth. And also, it's not just how good your brand is, it's also how many, suppose I have an Italian restaurant, how many other Italian restaurants are in the area. So they have a lot of factors that they consider before they set a commission with you. So try and negotiate, even if you're trying to sell on Swiggy, Zomato, like fresh food. If you're trying to sell fresh food, if that's your business, then try and negotiate your commission with them. But the average percentage is 18 to 23. Again, very high. So online means commissions are very high, okay? But they also give you scale and reach. In case of services, right? How do I price that? Like, I'm a yoga instructor, I'm a makeup artist, I'm a sari drapist. How do I then price that? One good way is for you to check a website like Urban Flap or HouseJoy, and, you know, kind of book a similar service at a peak time and check what is the price that they're offering. These marketplaces are the best way for you to know the most competitive price, and then you can accordingly price. Okay, she's giving for this, she's charging 500. I want to charge more. So what is my value addition that I can give so that I can charge a higher price to my consumer? So this is what I mean by setting an online price is very important, because your price should be all inclusive of the commissions. Also, what happens in case of Swiggy and Zomato, to give you an example, even if the price is 10 paisa lesser in the menu, or on Zomato, for instance, Swiggy will instantly drop me an email. It's called a price parity email. And they say, hey, you didn't match your price. I'm going to delist your product. Keep the price on all platforms same, because I don't want to lose a customer because of your mistake or stupidity. So instantly I get an email. This has happened to me. Swiggy sends me an email very, very instantly, and then I have to respond and I have to work on it. Otherwise, I lose business with Swiggy. Okay. So any doubts so far? Are you all with me? Let's just use the chat box quickly in case of any questions. Okay. Great. So now I'll move to my last section for today, which is usage of Google Forms. So is that something any of you have ever tried here? How to use Google Forms? Yes, and are you very comfortable? Because I thought today that I will just kind of briefly show you how to use Google Forms, because I find that a lot of people sometimes like to know how is it that I can create my own Google form. So is that something that you'd like me to show you today? Okay, great. So we will take 10 minutes now to finish up Google Forms, and then I'll open it up for any other questions that you may have. Okay. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen again. All right. So this is what your typical Gmail inbox looks like, correct? I think everyone's very well versed with this. You'll have 9 dots on your right-hand side. These are the 9 dots that I want you to go through. Just a second, please. Okay. 9 dots on your right-hand side is your starting point for creating your own Google form. Okay. And in these 9 dots, you're going to find all of Google's products. If you don't find it here, then all you have to do is click on More from Google and find it. What I will do is I already have it in another email, so I'm just going to use that for now. This is free to use, okay? A Google form is free to use once you have a Gmail setup. This is what it looks like. I'm just going to click on the forms and we'll get started with creating a Google form. Why do I need to create a Google form? Nobody asked me that, or does everybody already know that? We create a Google form for various reasons. One, market research. I have a brilliant idea, it's brilliant in my head. Does it really exist in real life? A Google form is a great way to get feedback. On a new product market, great way to get feedback on how, like suppose you did an event or you conducted a workshop. Just your feedback form. How is your experience with me? You can kind of use that, Google Forms for that. Third, home bakers. I see so many home bakers take orders on WhatsApp, on Instagram. Such a waste of time. Create a Google form, put your entire menu there, send the link, let them fill the detail. You will have it all in one place. So much easier to work with orders. Even if it's customized orders, you can use Google Form for all of that. Okay. Just checking your, yeah, survey, feedback, test marketing. That's all correct answer. So how do we get started? Now, when you reach the Google Forms homepage, you can either create a Google Form from scratch by clicking on blank, or you can use one of their pre-existing templates. Now, obviously, pre-existing templates is something you can do on your own. I don't want to waste your time. I'd rather teach you from scratch so that that becomes really easy. So I click on blank. Now, when I click on blank, immediately a boring form like this comes out, and I will now make it interesting. Okay, how will I do that? First step, click on untitled form, give it a nice heading. What is your purpose? So I'm going to say it's my market research for vegan pizzas. I'm just making up something. Okay, I'm going to give it a little description of we wanted to check if there was a market for healthier pizzas. So maybe, so please take a moment to fill this form in. Now a good Google form, it should ideally be less than a minute or so if you really ask me. No one has the time to fill a lengthy Google form today. You are, first of all, going to be taking a favor by asking people to fill a Google form for you. You do not want it to be long and boring. You'd rather make it short, concise, crisp. So you have to learn how to form your questions really well. Your first question, maybe it could be name perhaps, or if it's not important that you know their name, then you can skip name altogether. So your questions will start coming here. And then you're going to choose what type of an answer are you going to allow your participants to give. Is it going to be a short answer? Is it going to be a paragraph? Is it going to be a multiple choice, a checkbox, a drop down? So we'll just look at some of these. So say this is a short answer in case of a name. And I say, great, that's all I want. Second question, can you see a plus button here? That's the button that you're going to press to add another question. This time I'm going to say address. See, now it's not going to match the form really because I'm trying to show you all the features of Google Forms. So say I'm going to pick the address. This time it's going to be a paragraph form because obviously it's going to be much longer than just a name. So I can say, yes, I want to pick a paragraph for an answer. If you make this a required field, that is, if you turn it on, then you know what's going to come up over here is a small asterisk, which means this question is compulsory to fill. Otherwise, I cannot proceed to the next question. Sorry, I cannot submit the form. You can definitely proceed to the next question, but you cannot submit the form. So that becomes your required field. I again say add another question. And this time I'm probably going to ask, what kind of a pizza lover are you? Suppose that's my question. Now I say I want a multiple choice answer for this, and I will give the options as well. I'll say, what's a pizza without cheese? The second option could be, the world is moving towards veganism, and so am I. Suppose these are my two different options, okay? Now what I can do is to make it a bit more interesting, I can even add images to my Google Forms. So can you see this answer form here? And there's a little add image option that's coming up. When you click on that, and now you can either insert an image from your own gallery, you can upload your own photo, or you can do a Google image search directly from Google Forms. So say I'm going to pick cheese pizza, okay? I'm just searching for a cheese pizza. All of these options are now coming to me. Say I pick any image that I find interesting, and then I can say insert. And now you'll notice that an image also has come along with your Google form. Same thing, I can move over here, add another image over here, and again go to Google image search. Maybe look for a vegan pizza this time. And there are a whole bunch of options that are coming here. I can again pick something that I like, and I just say insert. Once I say insert, now this image is now going to come in over here. So what happens is these images are part of my answer options. This is again a great thing that you can do to make your Google Forms a bit more interesting. What else can you do? You can add another question. And this time, you can also add like a linear scale. Like think about this. You can say on this, how much, like rate your experience with our pizza. And you can say like the scale can be from 1 to 10 perhaps. You can decide what your scale can be. 1 being bad and 10 being great. Okay, so you can set this out, and when you set this out, the question will come and they can even rate it on a Google form. Can you see that now? Rate your experience with our pizza, and what's come up is a linear graph. So this is also something you can do on Google Forms. What you can also do is add images in between your questions. So if you have the same option, that is the plus option, just below that you'll see add image. And what you can do is, again, you can either pick it up from your desktop, or I'll just do a Google image search and I'll look up for another pizza. And what you can do is then just choose your pizza picture and say insert. Now what this does is it helps you in setting up an image in between your questions. Why should I do this? Simple thing is, even in between a Google form, you can actually advertise your products in between without anything. You can just say our all new pizza, must try something. I'm just giving you an example. So this isn't a question, but you're using it in between to market your products. So you can do that as well on Google Forms. Likewise, you can also add a video in between questions. So say, for example, I now press the video icon here. Everything's on the right-hand side. And I click on the video option. And I can actually take a video directly from YouTube. And suppose I don't have the link, I can do a direct YouTube search as well from Google Forms. So I say vegan pizza, for example, I'm looking for a video on vegan pizza. Just, as a form of education to my guests who are watching. So I can select any video from here and I say select. And now what's going to come up is a video will come up. So I can just say, watch this to know what's a vegan pizza. Suppose someone doesn't know. Okay. So I can even add a video. I can even add a photo. I can try different combinations of questions. One more question that I want to just show you is, suppose you say add your email address. Then what you can do is you can make it a short answer. However, you have these 3 dots at the bottom. You can click on that and you can say add a response validation. What this means is you can add some more filters so that the text that you get from your Google Forms is accurate. So for instance, I can say that let my text contain at. And if it doesn't have at when someone filled it up, I can give out an error message that says, please enter a valid email ID. Why would I do response validation? Just so that the errors in filling the form is reduced because I'm letting them know. Likewise, you can do a response validation for a phone number. If they don't enter a 10-digit number, you can send out a response validation error that says, please enter a 10-digit mobile number or a valid mobile number. Okay, so you can also do this kind of stuff on your Google Forms. Once you have created your form, you can at any point in time delete it by clicking on the dustbin icon. You can also move it. For example, you wanted to move this, so you can click on these 6 dots here and you can actually move it to somewhere on top as well. You can also decide to move this question below. You can do anything. You can move your questions up to down, shuffle it around to anything that you like. Once you're done with your basic questions on Google Forms, you can now customize your theme. How do you do that? Can you see this palette on my top right of my screen? You click on the palette and then you can actually choose a header image. Notice now that I don't have a header image. I can click on choosing an image. I can now choose on an illustration or anything. Like you can create a birthday invitation using Google Forms. You can use it for personal purposes as well. So say I'm picking food and dining and I'm just going to check if they have a pizza picture here. Oh yeah, great, they do. So say I'm going to choose this pizza picture and I say insert. Now what I've done is I've added a header to my whole Google form, making it a bit more exciting. And I can also change my theme color right from here. See, I can make it yellow, brown. They pick shades of the picture to give me theme color options automatically. I can choose any of this. I can change my background color as well, which is this background color. I can also change my font type. Like right now, I have a very simple basic font type. If I want, I can even change that to a decorative font or a formal font or a playful font. All of this is possible, right? So you can customize it based on what kind of a brand you have. Even your Google Forms can be customized according to that. When I'm done with this whole process, I have to click on the I button here to preview what my form looks like before I send it out to someone else. So I click on preview and I find that this is what my form looks like. Can you see these are my required fields because I made the address as a compulsory question or a required form. There's an asterisk here with a red color, a red asterisk, and which means I cannot proceed filling this form without filling this question in. All the others are optionals. You can make every question compulsory. So this is what a Google form now looks like. And when you're done with all of this, when you're done previewing, if you feel like you have any changes to make, just go back to your form. Go back to your form and make any changes, and then again click on the preview or the I button, and you'll get to see the revised Google form. So you can keep doing this whole process till you're very satisfied that your form looks exactly the way you want it to look. And when you're convinced, all you have to do is hit send. And now you can click on your link button, which is your second option. You can copy this link. You can also shorten this URL. So it becomes a very short link. And you can now copy that link with like a Command C or a Control C, or just simply press copy. And now you can paste it anywhere. You can paste it in email. You can also paste it on WhatsApp. You can send it on Instagram, on Facebook, any platform. All you have to do is just copy it and then paste it. For example, so I've pasted it here. Now the recipient who is receiving that form can just respond to this, and then I'll be able to see the answers. So this is how you send it. Just let's fill in this form quickly so you get an idea. Okay, so name, Shreya, address. I'm just giving you brief answers at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to go for veganism, rate our experience, and email ID. Once I fill my form and I say submit, so it automatically says your response has been recorded. Okay, so as a participant, I have now filled in your form. I just have to open my form again, and where you found questions, there you're also going to find responses. So as and when people start filling your Google form, you will start getting responses here, and then you can actually just go ahead and have a look at all of their responses. They'll also put it down for you in really nice graphs, or you can simply say, create a spreadsheet out of this. And when you click this, your responses now, you can create a new spreadsheet, or you can also add it to an existing spreadsheet. And then when you say create, you will now see the entire your responses in a good Excel format. And from here, it then becomes so easy, right, to pick up your data and to make anything. So just giving you an example of a running Google form that I have. I use it to sometimes take orders from my restaurant. And I'm just going to show you that. For example, this is my Google form that I'm currently using. And these are my responses. I can actually click on these responses and I can actually view them in sheets. And when I view these responses in sheet, can you see how easy it is for me, because it's all in one place, like the name of the customer, the phone number, the address, what their order is, what time they'd like the order to be delivered, where, when, everything is here. So easy for me to now manage these orders vis-a-vis opening one chat box, closing it, then passing the information, then sharing it. And then in that process, we get lost. So learn to use Google Forms. It makes life so much more simpler. So that's about Google Forms. In case you have any, I'm just going to check the chat box and see if you're all doing okay. Where do details show up eventually? Here in responses. So you can actually even see the responses like this. See, all your names of the people who've ordered are here, and all your addresses are here. The orders are here. And if also, like, if you ran some graphs, like this is good to check the graphs. But if you really want to know, I suggest moving to Sheets. When you move to Sheets, it all comes in an Excel format for you. Okay, so that's Google Forms. Can you please repeat how to add picture with options within a question? Yes, of course. So say this is my form, right? This was my Google form. Just a second. Sorry, was it this one? Yeah. I moved back to questions. So, so say I'm going to now edit this form again. So this form is always open, right? There's nothing like, there's no changes that are getting saved. It gets auto saved. So I add another question. When I add a question, right, where did my question go? 1 second. Let's add a question. Hold on, where did it go? Okay, right, they're coming here. So, say my question is, do you feel safe to dine in? And say my options, instead of a multiple choice, say I pick check boxes and I say, no, I will only take away. And my second option is yes, as long as you are following safety protocols. See, these are my options. All I have to do now is, when I have filled in my options, can you see there's an image option that opens up right next to it? You click on the image option and then you do a Google image search. If you have an image already of your own brand, then just upload it. Select browse and your image will show up, and you can choose your file from there. So your image comes up and you can pick the file. Or I'll just do a Google image search where I say, look for takeout food. And here, this is a takeout food picture, and I can just insert it directly. I love that it's integrated with Google, because the image searching is so much easier. Otherwise, I had to download an image, then I had to upload it again. Here, it's getting directly pulled, which is so much easier. And again, I can add another image here. Again, go to Google image search, and I can say safety in restaurant, maybe. And perhaps look at all these safety protocols, say maybe this man with the gloves perhaps, and I click on insert. And then that image gets added here. Okay, so this is how you add an image. I hope it's clear, Ms. Anupama. Can I use Google Forms to create product catalog? Can I send the form on WhatsApp to clients, broadcast list? Okay. So yes, you can create the form to create a product catalog. You can, but again, I think it depends on how big your product catalog is. Like if it's like 100 products, it makes no sense. If it's like 5 or 6 products, then it's great, of course, to use it. But you'll have to like say, this is my product 1. And is this what you want to order? You can put a picture of your product. And then you can also probably mention the price here. You'll have to mention it like this. This is for INR 100, perhaps. This is one way to do it. Or you list your menu and your products as an image. That's something that you can do, because you have an option to add an image. So if you've already designed it, say on Canva or something, we're anyway going to learn that in the next session, then add that here. And you can add another question that says, what is your order? And then you can write all your product names. So that's one way to create a product catalog. Can I send it to my WhatsApp? Yes, you can send it to your clients on your WhatsApp. You can, I don't know if you already know it, but you can open WhatsApp on web here on your laptop, and you can format that. If you just click on web.whatsapp.com, you can actually open up your entire WhatsApp chat on your desktop, and you can create a Google form from there. Now, what's important to understand is there is no app today for Google Forms on your iPad and on your iPhone. For all of the other Google products, there is. So this is something you have to come to your computer to do it, or basically from your Google do it, even if it's on your iPad. So you can open up your WhatsApp chat here on the desktop like this. I have deactivated it right now because I didn't want it to be disturbed during class, but this is how WhatsApp will just open up on your screen. And once it opens up, then you can just open any chat conversation that you wanted to go to and send it from there. Right? Broadcast list, the way they work is if they have saved your number, you can broadcast it to them. Otherwise, even if you broadcast it, if they haven't saved your number, then the messages don't go to them. So that's something about broadcast list that you need to understand. Okay, I hope your questions answered. All right. Yeah, so I'm kind of done. Over to you, Aina. And in case you have any other more questions, I'm here for a few more minutes.
Ashley, Aina, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Thanks, Shreya, for this constructive session and these fruitful learnings. I invite everyone to feel free to put up your queries on the chat box. And till then, Ashley and I have a few questions for you, Shreya.
Yes, of course.
First is how long did it take you to develop this platform? And are there any challenges you faced while doing so?
You mean Easy Hair?
Yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, this was a business by accident. Because like I mentioned, it started with a personal need because I realized everyone around me and my family is very, has the latest gadget. We all speak, everyone's well educated and stuff. So for me, it was an eye opener when I realized everyone has the latest gadget and phone, but barely knows how to use it, and how much simpler life would be if you just started becoming digitally literate. And of course, my generation, we grew up with the computers. And I think there was one certain generation that completely missed growing up. And for me, it was like, you can be literate in English, but that does not mean that you're literate digitally. I think for me, that was the biggest learning in COVID. And I also felt like so many women, so I teach a lot of, flow women especially, and they all come and tell me I'm such a dummy. And I say, you really mustn't feel like that. And you don't have to feel, because I wanted to create a safe space for you to say, I don't know it, because it's completely fine to not have grown up with technology. And it's only now in the last 5-10 years that it's just like kind of hit us and we don't know where to begin, because before we touch something, there's 10 other technologies that have come in. So that's really how Easy Hair started. Really initially to just teach family members, and then it kind of just spread word of mouth. And before we knew it, we were taking classes day in and out. But I love it. I love what I do because it's empowering, right? We're not giving a solution. We're teaching you how to do your own stuff. So that's how I am where I am.
And apart from this, the initiative also takes classes to help seniors differentiate between fake news and regular forwarded messages on WhatsApp. So is it true, because it is so important in today's world where news is originated from the WhatsApp University?
Oh yeah, so again, it was again born in COVID because I was so paranoid with the amount of misinformation that was being shared on WhatsApp, especially by my grandparents. And I felt like that was the audience that was most gullible. And then, of course, like intuitively, my generation could just say like, hey, that's fake news, that's rubbish. But then I figured there has to be a scientific way to deal with this. And I started researching a lot. And then I figured that there are actual tools to identify when the news is fake. And what are the kind of things people do? Like, they don't match the video with the text, how they repurpose an old video to kind of push out a message, how so much of this is politically backed. It has hidden agenda, and how a lot of the messages that are on WhatsApp are really to divide us more than unite us. And those statistics really baffle me. So then I started taking free sessions on Sundays to just educate, especially people over 40 that there are so many fake news on WhatsApp. And we just keep picking, and the minute I put up a fake news message on the screen, they'd be like, I received that. And I thought that was true. But that had Lilavati Hospital doctor's stamp, but that had this prescription. And, just the fact that all of that can actually be manipulated if you just know a simple tool like Canva, you can just do all of this. So that's really how the fake news session came about.
We would really like if you could incorporate some tips during our learning sessions.
Sure. I'd love to do it. I have a whole list of resources of fact checking, and I'll definitely check with Mannat ma'am and how we can put that in here too. No problem at all.
Thank you.
Sure, Shreya, we would definitely like to take this up because it's very important, because too much of information is also not good and it should be authentic. So yes, we're going to take it up very soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, over to you, Ashley.
Yeah, I had a question that when we are buying a domain name, how much is it advisable according to you that we should spend? That you gave us an example where easyhide.com is for rupees 4,000. So should we give a lot of attention to domain name, or patenting a brand name is more important?
I think they go hand in hand, right? Like it's as good as saying that if I have a brand name but I don't have an address to operate it out of, where will I do it? Same thing online. Just think about it like your address on the internet. It's very important to have a domain name. It's definitely not important to spend 4,000 rupees on a domain name. You can go in for the lesser available option. I don't need easyhair.com. I'm happy with easyhair.co.in. That's for 100 rupees. So as long as you have a digital footprint, that's important. Definitely don't go in for more expensive options. It might sound fancy, but you can take any domain name and make it as fancy as you like. That's what we need to understand.
Okay. And there's another question that I have, that there are plenty of companies that are coming up with the promoting business online through giving us reviews that we can buy, fake reviews and fake followers. Is it worth it?
Not at all. Anything fake or, I mean, unethical never is a good idea, right? And also, like, not just that. I mean, fake reviews and fake buy, I don't even think I should answer it. It is useless. I mean, you know that for a fact. And by the way, there are also websites that help you decide today. For instance, a friend just told me very recently that she started an influencer marketing company, and she was talking about how you could run profiles today on different social media companies that tell you how many of your followers are bot followers and how many followers are organic followers. So if you buy also, you spend so much money. Again, remember, this is glamour, doesn't get you money at the end of the day. And if you just want to do a business just to like be fancy, then you'd rather start a not-for-profit. That's what I'm trying to say. At least you're genuinely going to do good in society. Please do not do these kind of things like buy. No, there is no shortcut to success. Let me tell you this. I'm probably the younger person in the room, but let me tell you, there is no shortcut to success. What you have to build, every follower that you have to work hard for it. Your content needs to be engaging. You need to add real value. Only then you're going to build a sustainable business. Otherwise, it's going to be short-lived. And so what if you have 100,000 followers? It matters to a very small extent. And like I said, there are websites that help you today to demystify that these are fake accounts. These are fake reviews. These are fake followers. So if technology can buy you that, technology can also detect that. That's the other thing that you need to understand.
So if you could give us some sites so that we can, if we are buying somewhere, if we are on the buying side, so we can check for those companies, those who are using fake followers and fake reviews.
There isn't I don't know of a website that does that. But if you go through, right, like these fishy names, wishy-washy names, these are the ones that will tell you that, okay, this doesn't look right. But even on Amazon itself, right, so Amazon itself employs companies that their sole purpose and job on Amazon is to go through all of this, remove comments with offensive language, remove comments with abusive language. It is very deeply entrenched. My suggestion is, suppose you're buying a product and you don't know if the reviews are real or not, go through more than one or two other websites. If you're trying to buy something, don't just stick to Amazon. Check it on Flipkart. Check a YouTube review. When you check on multiple platforms, you will get a real answer of whether that product is genuinely good or not. Because more than half the things today are bought online. Like, I mean, you're buying people's opinion also. So very hard to then in that situation say, but look up. So if you're following an influencer and if you really believe in that, like if you're following a beauty influencer, you feel like she's genuinely out there promoting good products, check her reviews. So you have to again check the reviews of places or websites or brands that have established credibility.
Okay.
Do we have any questions from anyone? Please put it in the chat.
So I was trying to do the Google form, and my camera was not connecting. So is it that only your whatever pictures are there in your Google Drive, they will come, or it will happen? Probably I was just doing it quickly to follow you up.
So Google Drive is one place, but on top you'll find other options like Google Image Search. You can also pick up images from your desktop. So there are a whole bunch of options.
Okay, so you can use those options. Okay,
yeah. My favorite is to take directly from Google Image, but of course, when you're building your own brand, you may want to use your own product pictures. So that will be a good idea.
Okay, great. So Shreya, so whatever you've done today, do you think there's something that you'd like to just tell all our members to do a little homework so that we know, keep the graph, something?
Yeah. So I think what I recommend is, I think Mannat ma'am is planning to put in a little WhatsApp group perhaps after this for our learning, because I often get that this is good to sound, but it's so much information and I have to follow up. So maybe we can set up some WhatsApp rules. I will leave it to the admin, but try and make a Google form today and send a link on the WhatsApp group. I will review it, I'll go through it, and I will also give in my comments on what could have probably been better and stuff like that. And if you get stuck anyway, just take a screenshot and put it up on the WhatsApp group so I can even answer your query.
So great, great. I think that's going to be a good thing for everyone, all of us to at least start doing.
Possible to convert Excel details into contacts to send WhatsApp messages? Good question. No direct method. Indirectly, basically you take the number, copy it on your, and save it from there. That's how you have to do it.
So that means you really have to spend, I mean, if you've got a huge Excel sheet, you'll have to spend whatever. Each name you'll have to create separately as a contact.
Some software programs, I haven't explored it, but I recently came across something which is called Vati, W-A-T-I. Maybe you can look that up. I'm yet to explore that myself for my business. That helped in creating WhatsApp messages, basically handling my WhatsApp on the computer. So I'm guessing that will give me some options, because so WhatsApp business is becoming a huge part, grown more powerfully, stronger than every other channel. So you can be rest assured that in the near future, people are going to work on great products for WhatsApp. So everything from linking your Excel, it will come up very soon, because even Facebook and Instagram, they do understand that WhatsApp is a huge area. From personal communication, it's moved to business communication. So you can anticipate that there are going to be some great product improvement. So this is a good time to upskill, because when a newer technology comes in, you can just be one of the first people to, like, take on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
I think, Shreya, let's put you in a group where everybody else is added and you can answer their queries, right? What do you think of it, Shreya? Shreya, Ashley, Aina, Radhika?
Yes,
Yeah, sure.
we just discussed that, Mannat, a minute
Great
back.
idea.
Oh, you did? Oh, what time slot suits you?
So Mannat, I just suggested that we can do a little homework kind of thing. Like
Sure.
today we can put it in the group, saying that all of us who were keen should just and attended this workshop could just make a Google form and send it on the group, like a practice thing to know, and then Shreya can go through it. And I think it'll just get people involved more.
Sure. We can do so. What do you suggest, Shreya? Does it work?
Yeah, I think the best way to learn is to practice.
Absolutely. Let's do that. Let's do that learning
And
exercise. Yeah.
Share all the other slides as well, those who want it. I'm happy to share all of it.
Please do. Please do. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and have a lovely evening, and thank you for having
Thank
me.
you so much. and
Thank
stay
you so much.
Very informative session. You were fabulous, Shreya. Like you know your subject very well.
I've burned my hand so many times that I wish like I learned all this in an easier way and not have to go through all this, but
No,
I'm
excellent,
happy to share all
excellent.
of this. Thank you.
Wonderful resource, Mannat. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Guys, I
Ashley,
need to push off. So bye bye.
Ashley, over to you. Over to you to do the formality and announcing the next session, please.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shreya Shah, for such a valuable session. Eagerly waiting for the second session. Hope to see you all for the next session, and please don't leave the WhatsApp group, as all the information regarding other sessions and the whole series will be coming in that group. In case you have any queries, you can put it in the group and Ms. Shreya will reply to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Shreya. Our chat box is full of compliments and they want the recording of this session. If you may permit, could we share it with them if you advise us to?
Yeah, this session, yes, but I think going forward, let's not
Sure.
do that.
Sure.
If you want to learn, I think you have to put in that much effort and come.
Certainly, we couldn't have agreed more. Thank you so much, Shreya. Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for joining in.